I'm Dracula, and I welcome you to my house.
From the diary of Jonathan Harker, the 8th of May, 1893. I felt a hand on my shoulder, and heard the Count's voice saying to me, "Good morning." I started, for it amazed me that I had not seen him, since the reflection of the mirror covered the whole room behind me. Having been startled, I had cut myself slightly, but I did not notice at that moment. This was startling, and coming at the top of so many strange things, was beginning to increase the vague feeling of unease which I had when the Count was near. But at that moment I saw the cut had bled a little, and the blood was trickling over my chin. I put down the razor, turning as I did, so half round to look for some sticking plaster. When the Count saw my face, his eyes blazed with a sort of demonic fury, and he suddenly made a grab at my throat. I pulled away, and his hand touched the rosary beads which held the crucifix. It made an instant change in him, for his anger passed quickly, and I could hardly believe that it was ever there. "Take care," he said. "Take care how you cut yourself. It is more dangerous than you think in this country." Welcome, friends, to the House of Hammer, and for this episode to the Castle of Count Dracula. I am your host, Ben Taylorson. My co-hosts are currently engaged elsewhere. Kev's in the kitchen, de-garlicking a baguette, and Smokey's up on the battlements, shouting at bats. But they'll be along soon, as we take a look at Hammer's first iteration of the fella in the cape with the big pointy teeth, with a penchant for sucking the necks of beautiful young women. And occasionally young men, should needs must, or the mood take him. Today we are talking about Dracula, aka Horror of Dracula. Yes, we've made it. After well over 50 films, we finally arrive at the gothic towers and creaking gates of this famous Transylvanian abode. Actually, I'll stop you there. Well, I'll stop me there, because this particular version of Dracula isn't set in Transylvania. At least, it isn't mentioned by name. And the titular Count doesn't turn into a bat, or a dog. And he doesn't go to Whitby, or indeed England at all. He doesn't even get on a boat. But he does live in a coffin, and he reacts poorly to crucifixes and sunlight. So some of the things are as you might expect, at least. Which kind of illustrates a key point. Everyone knows who Dracula is and what he does. At least, we do now. Even by 1958, when this film was released, thanks to Universal bringing him to life so spectacularly a few decades earlier, Dracula had edged firmly into popular culture. In fact, by the time of this film's release, Count Dracula, or suspiciously close rip-offs of him, had already made an appearance in at least 13 movies. These include, in 1921, Dracula's Death. The Count's first appearance was in this Hungarian film, although it didn't follow the plot of Bram Stoker's novel. In this version, a woman experiences frightening visions after being admitted to an insane asylum, where one of the inmates claims to be Dracula. She has trouble determining whether the inmate's visions are real or merely nightmares. Sadly, this film is considered lost. But released in 1922 was Nosferatu, a symphony of horror, an unauthorized and unofficial adaptation of Stoker's novel. The Count is renamed as Count Orlok and is played by Max Schreck, looking like a kind of goblin you might find haunting a Victorian carpet factory. In 1931, Todd Browning directed Bela Lugosi in the highly successful Universal release of Dracula, adapted from the 1924 stage version of Stoker's novel. Also in 1931, a Spanish version of the Todd Browning film with a different cast was filmed on the same sets. In 1935, Bela Lugosi starred in another Todd Browning movie as Count Mora in MGM's Mark of the Vampire. This wasn't technically a Dracula film, but it kind of was really. It was also widely regarded as a remake of one of the most sought-after lost films of them all, Browning's 1927 silent movie London After Midnight. Bela Lugosi would again appear as a character who is Dracula in all but name, for copyright purposes, as the vampire Armand Tesla in Columbia Pictures' Return of the Vampire. Universal produced 2 sequels to their 1931 movie in the form of 1936's Dracula's Daughter and 1943's Son of Dracula. The Count also pops up in further Universal pictures House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, but it's fair to say the portrayal of the character changes to the point that they can't really be regarded as sequels to the original 1931 movie. In the 1953 Turkish movie Dracula Istanbul'da, there are a few things to note. It's the first screen version with sound that shows Dracula with fangs, the first screen version where he's seen to offer a newborn baby to his female vampire, and the first screen version that directly links Count Dracula to Vlad the Impaler. 1957's The Blood of Dracula was the last version before the Hammer film came along. Criticised on release as actually being nothing to do with Dracula, instead it was effectively a rehashing of the earlier American International Pictures hit I Was a Teenage Werewolf. That brings us up to speed on the previous on-screen Dracs, so let's concentrate on our movie for today. Having seen the success that Hammer had had with The Curse of Frankenstein, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee were reunited as Dr. Van Helsing and Count Dracula respectively. Hammer would work with Universal, who retained the rights to Dracula following a deal done with the Stoker estate, and produce a picture that was significantly shorter and tighter than the original source material. Screenwriter Jimmy Sangster was charged with ensuring all of the action takes place in a relatively small area of Central Europe to remove more expensive and elaborate scenes, and also to combine, reimagine and drop characters to keep the cast smaller and more interwoven. Now, we'll get to the plot in a moment, but in addition to the aforementioned Cushing and Lee, another actor playing a pivotal, prominent role in this movie is Michael Gough as Arthur Holmwood. You may know the name Michael Gough, no you may not, but you've almost certainly seen him in something before. Here's Smokey to tell you more.
If your first thoughts, when you think of Michael Gough, are of the gothic Hammer films, or of Alfred, Bruce Wayne's butler in Tim Burton's Batman movies, you really have only got to the tip of this particular iceberg. Francis Michael Gough was born on the 23rd of November 1916 in Kuala Lumpur. Son of parents Francis and Francis, Michael, after they moved to the UK, was educated in Tunbridge Wells, Durham and Agricultural College before he left to join the Old Vic Theatre in London. Being of suitable age for the army at the beginning of the Second World War, Michael was expected to join up. However, his position as a conscientious objector prohibited him from doing so. Instead, he was obliged to serve his time in the non-combatant corps in Liverpool. Post-war, his on-screen debut wasn't far away. His inaugural film appearance came in Mark Allegret's 1948 film Blanche Fury, alongside Stuart Granger and Valerie Hobson. After appearing in today's subject of Dracula for Hammer in 1958, and again for the studio in 1962's Phantom of the Opera, Michael Gough carved out something of a niche in the horror genre. Garnering roles in Horrors of the Black Museum in 1959, The Skull in 1965, and then in 1973, both Horror Hospital and The Legend of Hell House. On television, he racked up parts in The Avengers, Colditz, Brideshead Revisited, and also Smiley's People, alongside Alec Guinness. However, it was in 1966 that he appeared in a role that is very much adored by fans of this particular show, going up against William Hartnell's Doctor as the Celestial Toymaker in Doctor Who.
Doctor, I offer you power. Power to corrupt, to destroy. Think of the exhilaration of that power. Serve me and live.
Never! Never, my friend! You have been defeated.
We will see, old man. The game is not yet over. We shall see.
Back to what probably comes to mind for most when the name Michael Gough is mentioned, his arguably most famous role of Alfred Pennyworth in all 4 of the Burton/Schumacher series. Alongside Pat Hingle as the only actor to appear in all 4 films, he would also go on to voice Alfred in 2 BBC-produced Batman dramas, The Lazarus Syndrome in 1989 and Batman Nightfall in 1994. Rather nicely, an appearance in 2 separate films, would reunite him with Van Helsing and Dracula respectively, with Peter Cushing in spy spoof Top Secret in 1984, and then with Christopher Lee in Sleepy Hollow in 1999. On the 17th of March in 2011, Michael Gough passed away at the age of 94. He was cremated, and his ashes were scattered in the English Channel. He was survived by fourth wife Henrietta, daughter Emma, and sons Simon and Jasper. All told, across his acting career on stage and on screen, Michael Gough notched up over 150 appearances, collecting BAFTAs and Tonys along the way. An intensely likeable and kind man. Those many who had the pleasure of working with him all had only nice things to say about him. But, as is sometimes the case, it's best to leave you with the man himself.
Well, I've worked with a lot of big names, yes. I'm blessed to have done that. Mm-hmm. And when I started off, I was... Alec Guinness was a small part actor. Laurence Olivier was playing Hamlet for the first time. Edith Evans, Michael Redgrave. They were all... And I was a student, and they were all actors. They weren't such stars then. Larry was. He'd already been to Hollywood. But all the rest, it was the first time in London and things like that, you know. So it was a marvellous start.
Could you see there was something special with them?
Oh, yes. I mean, they were wonderful. I thought they were fantastic. You know, they were great.
Was there anyone that was horrible?
No, I've been extraordinarily blessed.
There was a pause there for a moment.
Well, I was just trying to think. There must be somebody. I've been extraordinarily blessed. They've been lovely people. But then I think actors are nice. Actors, as a race, are really nice people, you know, and that's extraordinarily lucky we are, you know, to be with nice people.
Thanks for that, Smokes. Okay, so this film then. Jonathan Harker arrives at Castle Dracula to find a meal prepared, but the Count otherwise engaged. He's barely finished off the rhubarb crumble and dream topping when a busty vampire woman appears, as played by Valerie Gaunt. Her attempts to seduce Harker are scuppered when the Count appears, looming above them from the top of the staircase like some sinister dirigible, before descending down for a bit of a chat. We soon find out, through his diary entries, that Harker is actually there to kill Dracula and end his reign of terror. However, no details are offered as to the nature of this terror. Not that it matters, as Harker fails miserably, albeit he does get to give the busty vampire woman a good staking, and turn her from undead temptress into actually dead hag. But before all of this, the Count takes a peculiar and noteworthy interest in a picture of Harker's fiancée. Next we're introduced to Dr. Van Helsing. He was working with Harker to bring Dracula down, but when he arrives at the castle, the Count is gone and Harker has pointy teeth and is taken to sleeping in a coffin. And so Van Helsing is forced to stake him and return to, well, somewhere else, to inform his relatives. Harker's betrothed, Lucy, and his would-have-been brother and sister-in-law, Arthur and Mina. As it turns out, Lucy isn't feeling so well. She's looking rather anemic and has 2 peculiar marks on her neck, leading Van Helsing to suspect that the Count has paid her a visit, which indeed he has, for some erotic biting and bloodletting. Despite Van Helsing prescribing boatloads of garlic and crucifixes, the homewards maid Gerda accidentally clears the way for the Count to strike again and finish Lucy off. With Lucy now an undead horror harlot, Arthur and Van Helsing are forced to confront her. Meanwhile, Dracula turns his attentions to Mina, who is lured away and giving so much of a good hard sucking she needs a blood transfusion, which seems a little historically inaccurate. Or does it? Well, here's Kev to tell us more.
We know that Dracula is set in 1885, shortly after the film has begun, so I was slightly disturbed when there was a scene involving a blood transfusion for a few reasons. Firstly, like spiral staircases, I find the idea of sticking any needle in my arm absolutely terrifying. Then there's the thought of giving an armful to anyone. That's simply awful. I mean, what if I have to sign another deal with the devil in blood and find out that it's a bit empty? That would be incredibly embarrassing. But the main thing I was perturbed by was exactly when did blood transfusions become a thing? After all, we'd not even worked out sterilisation at that point in time, and I do like to have the correct facts, figures and business plans in place. Which leads me to blood transfusions. Apparently, Spanish conquistadors were stunned to find out that the Incas were already au fait with the practice in the 1500s. Replicating this back in Europe proved less successful, and it wasn't until the 1660s that a dog-to-dog transfusion was finally fruitful. Spurred on by this, Dr. Jean-Baptiste Denis started performing sheep-to-human experiments to varied results. It seemed the more blood that was swapped, the less likely the subjects would survive. It would take nearly another couple of 100 years before someone figured out that animal blood probably wasn't the best thing. After all, there are 30 types of horse blood, approximately 800 types of cow's blood, and lobsters have blue blood, which will only work if you live in Windsor. This all led to some American physicians using milk from cows and goats instead. Needless to say, the whole confused mess continued to be still more than a bit touch and go for quite a while, because the 3 blood types weren't discovered until 1901. It turns out that what made the Incas so easygoing with the whole thing was practically all of them were type O. Hindsight really is a wonderful thing. Eventually, the practice of transfusion became a lot less dicey, and by the 1930s, donating to the first blood banks was the done thing, so all the vampires had much easier access to their savings. So there you go. It seems that the blood transfusion scene in Dracula is, like his teeth, on point.
Cheers, Kevy. So, you're up to speed. Van Helsing and Arthur Holmwood must now work together to stop Dracula sucking Mina to death before presumably moving on to the next frustrated female victim. So at this point it's on to the round table, where I'm joined by Kev and Smokey to talk about what we thought of it all. And be sure to stay tuned afterwards for a very special interview.
Seeing as though we're doing a fairly important film as far as Hammer history is concerned, a few people have heard about this one. I figured rather than us do a blow-by-blow walkthrough, because it'll take us hours, I thought I'd just try and boil it down to the 3 places, if you like. It kind of takes place in 3 places. The first is Dracula's castle, where Harker is supposedly a guest, when in reality he's as much a prisoner as Valerie Gaunt's vampire woman. And then the second is really, apart from obviously the inn, it's pretty much all at the Holmwood's estate, isn't it? And then the third is at Karlstadt, where it's all at the coffin makers and the crypt. So I thought if we split it that way, we can kind of bounce about the place a bit and have some fun with Dracula. So we'll start off with the castle at Klausenberg then.
Yeah, so introduced straight away to Jonathan Harker and his memoir about his time being there. Off mic, I'd mentioned to you two about looking at some really dodgy reviews of this film. And obviously, there are some people who complain that it deviates from the source material too much, which I think some people don't realise that they couldn't really go near the source material that much, because Universal still having a bit of a hand over Dracula.
And the Stoker estate.
Exactly, yeah. And the Stoker estate. They had to be kind of careful with what they did. So, to find out in this version that not only is Jonathan Harker there to sort out Dracula's library, which I'm sure Ben was delighted with.
Yeah.
But, a proper librarian, Ben. But also
indexing the volumes. Yes.
Yeah.
He was an adventurous librarian.
He really was.
Until he got turned into a vampire and killed. But anyway, yes.
Well, beggars can't be choosers, mate. You know, it happens to the best of us sometimes. But also the point is that in this version, he's fully aware of what Dracula is. He's there to kind of spy on him and possibly destroy him at the behest of his good mate Van Helsing. And I mean, as deviations on source materials go, it's different, but it's brilliant.
I mean, it's an abridged version of the story. Well, I mean, it isn't the story. No. You know, it takes elements of the story and characters from the story, and it mashes them together and abridges it. I mean, largely to save money, as far as I understand, because they had, you know, still relatively micro budget in which to produce this, so they couldn't afford boats in the dark and dogs, demon dogs, and Whitby Abbey and all of that. You know, they kept it in, as Kev's nicely summarised at the beginning, three real key locations, all of which look suspiciously like the other locations from a different angle.
Yeah.
and as you say, brought in, they completely jettisoned some characters. So there's no Renfield, for example, but
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. It keeps the film a nice tight 80 minutes.
Yeah.
What I would say, though, is, sort of starting to delve into it a little bit, I have one major criticism of this film. I like it very much, and I'll say that from the beginning, and I absolutely adore Christopher Lee in this.
Yep.
But my major criticism is that they don't even take any time at all at the beginning, like they did with Frankenstein, to say, you remember Frankenstein, it's great, isn't it? Let's have some more Frankenstein, and then go into the story.
Yeah.
They do that a little bit. There's the opening credits, we see Dracula's coffin, and we see the blood dripping on it, and everyone knows who Dracula is. Ooh. But nowhere in the narrative do we talk about who Dracula is. Nowhere in it is he given any motivation or any history or any explanation as to why he's doing what he is or why we should be frightened of him. It's all assumed knowledge, and it just irritates me a bit. It's a little bit lazy, I think.
I think the only sort of exposition of that is at one point Peter Cushing just say, I think he's been alive for 600 years. But that's it.
That's it, yeah. And we get, later on, we get the exposition wax cylinder that he plays that tells us all about vampires. And we get a little bit more, as you say, about his age. But obviously, Christopher Lee's performance is notoriously only got 16 lines of dialogue, and he's hardly in the film. And it's the minimalist, and it doesn't honestly distract from his performance. His performance is fantastic. But as a story to be sort of engrossed by and to follow through. Imagine coming to this and not knowing who Dracula was. You're never going to work out for yourself. That I think that there's two strands to that. The one is looking back with the understanding we have now of the character from 2023 and having to remember that this is such a seminal Dracula moment. This depiction is, we all take it for granted now, but this is the moment that Dracula, with a lot of the characteristics we assume and associate with him come from this performance. Yeah. But the other thing is, we bring that sort of extra 65 years of understanding of the character that some people maybe wouldn't have had. I mean, I know Dracula was obviously, a very notorious and legendary character, even by this point through the Universal things. But for me, a film should always be able to stand alone in its own merits and not assume an audience knowledge. And that's the main difference between Curse of Frankenstein and this film just doesn't take the time to establish who he is. And I just find that a bit annoying.
It's Stan Lee's ethos, isn't it? It's of saying every comic book is someone's first comic book. So every Dracula film is someone's first Dracula film. So you do have to have the motivation, as you say, for Count Dracula. And yeah, it isn't there in this at all.
We see what he does, but we just don't really get any insight as to why he does it.
No, he's just a bit of a horny pervert who breaks into women's open windows.
Thirsty old man.
Thirsty, dirty old man.
Yeah, but I think it's actually an animalistic thing because if you look at him, he starts off and he's very urbane, but as the bloodlust starts to kick in, he suddenly becomes very animalistic.
Oh, yeah.
So much so that he becomes a hissing...
He becomes mute.
A hissing creature. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it doesn't mess around because we're 15 minutes in, and we get to see Dracula, and we don't just get to see him, we get in full bloodshot eyes glory. And it does away with vampire woman pretty quickly. That's in the first 15 minutes. He's not only killed her, but then within the space of a minute, you've got rid of Jonathan Harker as well. He's dispatched him.
Yeah, we should mention him actually, John Van Essen. This is his now, let me count, 4th Hammer film.
Wow.
He was, we've just seen him quite recently in Quatermass 2. He was also in Four-Sided Triangle, but he was also, I think more importantly, Will Scarlet in The Men of Sherwood Forest.
Definitely the more important
I think so. Yeah.
Actually, thinking about it, all this section, you've got Harker and Valerie Gaunt as the vampire woman who we never get to find a name for. Their work could have been done in maybe a day or maybe 2 days. Because they're all in one set. I'd looked, and Harker's costume is basically him changing his jacket. He changes his jacket from a light beige to a blue one. And that's it. So you can bet you bottom dollar they've done this before dinner and after dinner.
Yeah, well, it's very possible.
Efficient filmmaking.
Very, very efficient.
They had no money, they had no time.
Well, they did it on an £82,000 budget, which is ridiculous.
It's incredible.
It's less than craft services.
If you think that we're talking however long it took them to do it, didn't take them long. And in that time, they create at least 2 of the most iconic Hammer scenes ever filmed.
Mm.
I'm talking about the appearance of Dracula as he comes, appears from the shadows down the stairs and then right into the camera.
It's
so sort of utterly terrifying, even without doing anything. And then, as you said, Valerie Gaunt's growing teeth and biting Jonathan Harker on the neck, and those beautiful eyes glowing in the light as she does so. It's those 2 scenes alone are, they're iconic, legendary.
She's the first vampire fangs in Hammer history as well.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, well, that makes perfect sense. Because obviously she met such a really unfortunate demise in The Curse of Frankenstein. So,
Yeah.
and she meets an unfortunate one here as well. But to be fair, she was already dead, so it doesn't really count. But I'm sure it's been talked about a lot from various other sources and places. Is as you say, that entrance of Christopher Lee as Dracula is stunning.
Yeah.
And when you look at him in The Curse of Frankenstein, obviously, he was covered in bandages and latex and God knows what else. And, okay, granted, he put on a great performance, no words, which is obvious for the character. But as soon as you see him come down those stairs, and as you say, he comes, full focus into the camera, I mean, that's a star being born. It's a remarkable entrance and presence. And as you say, 16 lines of dialogue, and they're all done before the 10-minute mark.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the only scene in which he talks, isn't it, this one?
Yeah.
That's a star. That is an absolute bona fide star. And also, because, as you say, the entrance is iconic, and that's fine. But the scene I loved was when he asks to see the photo of Lucy that Jonathan has with him. And it's so understated, and he's just, just saying, oh, is this your wife? Oh, no, it's my fiancé and whatnot. And he literally just looks and just goes,
Charming. Charming.
that's seductive and powerful, and it's so clever. Yeah, wonderful.
I'd actually noted the subtlety in his performance as well, because there's a bit where Harker goes and skewers Valerie Gaunt while she's having a bit of a nap. And his expression when he wakes up, when she's like shocked at being killed, and he wakes up and his eyes are wide awake, and he starts off and he's in pain, but then he notices that the light is actually sinking in the background behind Harker, and Harker doesn't notice, and suddenly that look of pain becomes pure evil, and he's mocking, and he's just like, you're not going to survive now. You don't realise just how bad it's going to get.
You've got to blame Harker himself for his naivety. I mean, if you've got to go around staking people, you've got to do the big lad first. You can't leave him till last. For goodness sakes.
This is an issue I had with the film. I mean, I get it. The film's called Dracula.
Don't do it at dusk.
Exactly, yeah. Don't do it at dusk and get in first and early.
Yeah, true. I mean, the names are a dead giveaway. If it had been Alucard like he is in everything else, it would have been fine.
That's so clever.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. But no, I mean, surely this is ludicrous, isn't it? I mean, the film has to lose a point for this alone, because Dracula's lying there, and you go for his henchwoman. Bit silly, isn't it?
He's getting his aim in.
Getting his aim. She's lying down.
Exactly. That would be,
He's practicing his swing.
Exactly, yeah. He's got a stake as elbow.
As you said, mate, the big lad is right there.
I know you.
Yeah.
I'm watching it. You just think, what are you doing, man? Don't start. You don't start with a dessert. You get in straight with the main course.
Talking about subtlety, there's also the bit where when Christopher Lee actually comes back in as Dracula and he stands in the doorframe, you hear the stake drop to the floor as Harker just realises, oh no, that's it, I'm done for, and then it just fades to black. So we'll jog on over to the second place then, and it starts 23 minutes in, and we're introduced to Van Helsing at the inn. before he hightails it to the castle to kill Jonathan, even if he did miss Dracula, who'd give him the slip in a sports coffin.
Yeah. It is like the horse and carriage equivalent of a Ford Escort, XR3i, isn't it? When it goes past
Yeah. He's definitely got a spoiler on there somewhere.
Yeah.
So go faster stripes down his coffin.
Yeah, alloy wheels on
definitely.
the carriage. Yeah.
He definitely needs go faster stripes because, Christ almighty, he does some moving about.
Yeah.
He moves then to the home and family crypt of the Holmwoods at St. Joseph's in the neighbouring state of Karlstad. And that's really our main second location, apart from the odd little diversion here and there, like to Van Helsing's house. But yeah, so we're there.
Yeah, we also, as we already know, that Jonathan isn't long for this world. so he's brown bread. Van Helsing has gone to tell his relatives that Jonathan's died. And not only that, but he's burnt the body as well, which I thought was, without it. Oh, no, it was, what did they say? Oh, and who said that was a good idea? And he's like, he did. It's like, are you sure?
No, it wasn't me. No.
It wasn't. No, I held the match. Yeah. No. But we do meet the wonderful Michael Gough, who starts off in that first scene with him in, who is an absolute wet blanket, and he does seem to, he does have a stick lodged somewhere, and you start off really kind of disliking him, but thankfully he does mellow as the film goes on, and something jumping forward a little bit in the film, but something I really liked was that he causes a major issue, but he actually owns up to it.
Mm-hmm.
He actually turns around to Van Helsing and goes, do you know what? That's all my fault. If I'd actually listened to you, things would have been a hell of a lot better. When does that happen in a film?
Very rarely.
I was like, fair play to you, Michael Gough, for owning up to you being stupid.
I would say that Holmwood's character is probably the most interesting out of all of it because he's the one that's not on the straight trajectory. He has a real arc. He starts off, like you said, a complete wet blanket kind of upper class twit kind of thing. And by the end of it, he's like Blade.
Well, but that's the thing as well, because within the context of the story, he doesn't have the protection of being a man of medicine or a man of science, which comes with a certain degree of gravitas. He's not an adventurer. He's just Mr. Man. And then by the end of it, he's Mr. Superman.
He's like Blade.
He's like Blade.
Oh, dear me. But we also, of course, we meet the lovely Mina, which is always good, which is Melissa Strybing, who, I mean, it's the sort of the bit of trivia that everyone knows, isn't it, of when she re-emerges after meeting Dracula for the first time and got yelled to pretend that she just had the best sex of her life to get the desired acting effect.
It works.
It works
as well because I didn't know this.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't know about that story at all. So, yeah, that's great.
I remember Ben describing Belinda Lee as, just sort of saying, oh, smolder for the camera, smolder. And it's like they did exactly the same for her as well, because, dear God, the camera nearly caught fire.
Definitely.
And, of course, the other major female character that we're introduced to here is Lucy. So Lucy is Arthur's sister. So these are all familiar names to your casual Dracula fan, but they're all playing slightly different characters to what you would be used to in the story. So in this case, Lucy, as we very quickly realise, has already been visited by Dracula as revenge for the fact that Harker tried to kill him. And she's very ill. And what we can see that, and again, this is the symbolism that you've alluded to there about sex and sin. Smokey is present in her appearance as well. So she's preparing for his arrival. She opens her windows and takes off her crucifix, to read into that whatever you like. Mm-hmm. It's not just the straightforward vampiric themes I'm talking about. And she hitches up her nightie and she waits for his arrival. And he, Julie, as you say, appears in the window looking immense and terrific, and the way that shot is lit across his eyes as well, it makes him look utterly terrifying, and he doesn't have to even move. And then he, of course, descends on her and lifts up his cape, and is he biting her or what's he doing? Who knows? We'll leave that up to. Yeah, we'll leave that up to. Well, a bit of both.
Well, speaking of the cut across his eyes, where you've got that light. The actual smash cut to that is absolutely fantastic because you've got Van Helsing in the scene before recording into his wax cylinder recorder, which he
Remember them, Kev?
is really... Yeah, still got mine. Along with my mini discs. But he's recording into that, and I'm thinking, wow, this guy is really switched on, because he's using a wax cylinder recorder about a decade before they were actually available.
Yeah.
But you think, actually, I'll give it a buy, because Van Helsing is that kind of guy that would have prototype stuff anyway. He's very cutting edge. I mean, he's at one point trying to establish the rules of vampires. He's trying, he's basically trying to figure out, right, crucifix good, garlic good, light good, but that's it. That's all you get. So if ever you see somebody complaining about them going, but you could see his reflection, and you could see him breathing, that's never mentioned.
Yeah. They take the supernatural element away as much as anything, as you say. It's in the narrative, the script, isn't it, about the fact that he can't turn into bats or a wolf or anything like that. What I do like though about sort of Victorian scientists, or even earlier, is that they just know all science. They don't like specialize in one bit. It goes back to what you said as well about the wax, because he's a man of science, so of course he has these things because he knows science. He'd have all of it.
Yes, he's doing sciencing. Yeah, exactly. It's like barbers; they do dentistry, so why not?
And blacksmiths, yeah.
Yeah, but then the smash cut from his scene with his wax cylinder, where he actually says,
He must be found and destroyed.
and then it goes bam, straight to Dracula with the light across the eyes. What a fantastic cut. And it reminded me of the shot in The Curse of Frankenstein. You know, when you first see the monster and it kind of does that crash zoom right into Christopher Lee's face. Yeah. It had the same impact to me. We're like, whoa, hang on. Ooh, that's a bit... Whew.
You were just wanting to get some marmalade past you, weren't you?
Yeah. Don't start us again on the marmalade.
Sorry,
for God's sake.
Why haven't we done a segment on marmalade?
We've still got another 400 million films to go, haven't you, Tom?
Yeah.
I'm predicting it now. There will be a segment on marmalade.
Marmalade. I might save it for the last ever episode.
Yeah, the thing I do like though is that Mina, obviously she knows her sister-in-law is very unwell in bed. And
anemic, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, and that's the red flag for Van Helsing, isn't it? Yeah, because if you're anemic, then you've been seduced by Dracula. That's a big red flag, literally red flag.
Hey,
yeah, but I love that. But it's also the fact is that you have Arthur and you have Mina, and it's her, Mina, who breaks the protocol and goes to visit Van Helsing. Yeah, which I thought was good, because you'd kind of expect Arthur to sort of go and say, right, tell me more what happened to Jonathan, or tell me more what's happening to my sister. But it's not. It's Mina, and I really like that.
Yeah, she's got some agency in this.
Yeah, well, until she gets bitten and defiled.
Well, yeah, well, then she's got somebody else's agency. There's also a lovely scene, like I mentioned, Christopher Lee's subtlety. There's also a lovely piece with Peter Cushing when he's inspecting Miss Lucy, when he's actually brought over by Mina.
Yep.
And he's like checking her out, and he subtly moves her head, sees the bite mark, and you watch his face. His face is fantastic. It's, I kept rewinding it because I'm going, this is just perfect performing here. Yeah. Fantastic. Every last frame.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should put out, well, personally, I think as wonderful as Christopher Lee is, Cushing's just incredible in this. He was born to play Van Helsing.
Definitely, yeah.
I mean, I prefer him in this role than I do to Frankenstein, to be perfectly honest.
Well, Frankenstein's always a bit of a swine. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But it's just...
Not a likeable chap.
There's just... when that Cushing charm, gets turned up to 11, it's just sort of like, oh, God damn, he's good.
With the little girl towards the end, when he's making sure that she's sat watching the daylight break and making sure she's warm with a coat and covered in a massive crucifix so no vampires can eat her. Yeah. It's beautiful.
That's actually my favourite line of the film, because obviously they've shepherded Lucy away from what was her name? The little girl. She had a really
Tanya.
Yeah. Who knew that was an old-timey name?
And
not from someone from Essex. But
from the estate.
Yeah,
it was a barmaid in the Nag's Head, I seem to remember.
they've shepherded her away by putting the old crucifix on her head, and that was great. But it's my favourite line of the film when Peter Cushing says to the little girl, he says, "Right, don't worry, we're going to get you home. We're going to go home now." And she goes, "Not with Aunt Lucy." It was just like, why? Yeah, because she had really big teeth and she just burnt under a crucifix. Yeah, no, she's not coming for this. That's my favourite line. Made me chuckle every time I watched it. Oh, fantastic.
Going on to burning Aunt Lucy as well, you suddenly see the flip side of Peter Cushing as well there, because he's really steely determined, and you can see that he's really intent on destroying this vampire. Yep. It just turns on a dime, doesn't it?
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, he knows what to do. And as you said, that's obviously what Arthur is sort of refusing to accept, that they need to lure Dracula in. But he sort of doesn't need much persuading to whip out the stake and hammer set and get to work on it. Yeah, within a particularly gore-soaked nailing through the chest of Lucy, you do get a bit of blood there as well, which is quite nice. Because you do feel slightly robbed that we don't see Harker impaled to death. So it's nice to, get... I know we saw the other vampire woman, the nameless vampire woman, get it and then turn into a hag. But it was quite nice to see someone, be bloodied.
Yeah, but again, you don't actually see her get it. You see her afterwards.
Who vampire
you don't
woman?
Actually see
vampire woman. No, you don't see the stake go into
all
her,
subtle,
like you do with Lucy.
You only get to see Lucy, and that's about 45, 50 minutes into the film. So you really are kind of held off as far as gore and killing and stuff. It's quite light, and it's all suggestion, isn't it?
Yeah, and I have to say, if you're watching this film, watch, because Peter Cushing hits the stake 3 times, and like the first 2 fairly hard. It's the third strike, and he absolutely wellies it.
Yeah, wellies it, and it really makes home base, doesn't it? It just goes straight down, and then you see him pick his hand back up, and his left little finger is just covered in blood, and you think...
It's a proper kill shot. It's awesome.
It's come out the bottom of the coffin.
Yeah, it's gone straight through.
Into his foot.
Knew I should have worn my steel toe caps.
My vampire shoes, yeah.
Well, speaking of coffins then, as third place is the coffin makers in Karlstadt, where it's quite clear that Dracula is at least 2 steps ahead of Holmwood and Van Helsing with his magic pop-up coffin. He's also managed to have his wicked way with every woman except Gilda the rubbish housekeeper. And who's to say that she hadn't been accosted as well, because she looks a bit shaken.
And Inga, he never got her because the bar was full of garlic.
True, yeah.
With the anachronistic bottle of Gordon's gin that's on the bar, which really didn't exist.
Now it's ye oldie Gordon's gin.
Yeah. You giving that one a buy, are you?
I'll always give it a buy.
I thought you would.
You'd think, though, if you were fleeing your castle, like sort of under cover of night, to sort of, I don't know, stalk around elsewhere, hoping to not be noticed, you wouldn't go in a bright white coffin.
No.
You pick something like a sort of a neutral colour, surely.
Also a coffin with a cross on it as well.
Yeah, it's not a good start every day for a vampire, is it? Oh God, not that. Yeah.
I can't get out of bed, literally. Yeah. Every time I touch my duvet, it burns my hand.
That's quite a nice touch as well, because you never actually see Christopher Lee get out of the coffin or get into it. He's always stood up.
That's good filmmaking, isn't it?
We see him lay down in it. But
exactly, but good,
yeah.
Good filmmakers cut the awkward bits out, the bits that you don't...
Yes.
It's like when people say, why do you never see anyone go to the toilet in Coronation Street? Because no one wants to watch that, and I don't want to see Christopher Lee struggling out of a coffin smelling of soil.
Well, I don't want to watch Coronation Street.
I just want to see him out and medicine. It's like there's a point. One thing I really did like is in one of the earlier scenes when he ascends the staircase, he takes them 2 at a time to make him look like he's floating up the stairs. And it's like that's something good, because that's an excellent way to sort of illustrate the scary vampire. But as you say, I don't want to see him struggling out of a coffin like a little old man.
It'd be like trying to get out of a hammock.
Yeah, it's like after the summer wine. Yeah.
going down a hill in a bath. It's just silly.
In a coffin with wheels.
In a coffin with wheels. We go faster stripes and alloys.
Oh my word, we've got the rewrite.
No, but no, I mean, you're right though. I do like the reveal. So obviously, you know.
Oh yeah, the twist. Yeah.
Yeah. By the time that Mina has been taken now, after the best sex she's ever had, and
yeah,
and then then
or
we get
just a biting, we don't know.
All right, naive man. So we get that. Yeah, the housekeeper. She's they want more wine. She says, I can't do that because I've been told not to go into the cellar. And he's like, oh crap. He's literally in their house. It's genius.
And he springs to action completely, doesn't he?
Peter Cushing, who knew, could leap like a gazelle.
Oh my word! Good God, he's like a coiled spring. There's a lot of wine on offer in this place because thinking about it, when they have a blood transfusion sort of later on, after Michael Gough starts to try and get up and gets a bit giddy because he's obviously got no blood left, he says, what you need is some tea, coffee, or better still, wine.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to have a doctor that says, right, you need to drink more wine.
I've donated blood several times. They don't say that to you afterwards, as far as I remember.
It was the late 1800s, mate. It's a different time.
Yeah.
You were born in the wrong era, Ben.
I was. 3 biscuits and a cup of tea is all I got. Yeah.
That's this century's version.
What you need is more biscuits. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Something we haven't really mentioned is that this film is only 80, just a shade around 80 minutes, and it doesn't have fly. It doesn't pause for breath at all. Even the sort of the expositional scenes of just the sort of the dialogue between Van Helsing and Arthur and Mina as well. It's still giving you what you need, and it flies along at a breakneck pace. And that, I was looking at the time left on the film, and it was sort of like saying, it has 9 minutes left, and I'm like, how? How? I didn't understand how they were going to fit everything into that short space of time. And then, of course, as I say, you get Peter Cushing leaping like crazy, and you get let's not sugarcoat this. You get a massive brawl between Van Helsing and Dracula. It's not, stay away, I've got a crucifix, I'm going to bite you. It's a brawl.
Yeah. It's a chase across the castle as well. And they are really pegging it. They're not kind of fake running like they would in Doctor Who, because they're going to run out of corridor. No, these are really bolting for it.
This was all filmed in Bray, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was the first film to be filmed in Studio A, which was their new big room.
Well, you can tell they utilised it really well too, because it just, it looks great.
Oh, God, yeah.
They used it in several different ways, didn't they? Because they put up a screen for Dracula's castle at the beginning and then reused it again at the end for a different location in a couple, I think. But it's great, isn't it? It's absolutely fantastic.
Beautiful.
I mean, in the big battle at the end as well, obviously, when he finally gets the bed, it's a bit like Gremlins, isn't it? When he runs to the curtains and opens them and catches Dracula in the sunlight. But he's melted his foot, and so Dracula's in deep trouble. Now, I absolutely adore the bit where he picks up the 2 candlesticks and makes the crucifix. I just think that is one of the most iconic Hammer shots. It's utterly brilliant.
They mention it in From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah. Any 2 objects can make a crucifix.
Yeah, Peter Cushing used to do it all the time. Yeah. But also, can I just say, bingo card, manky hand.
Phil Leakey.
We get another Phil Leakey manky hand.
We have 2 manky hands in this.
Yeah, because there's one in front of his face as well.
Yeah.
There's one in front of his face, and then there's Lisa's hand as well.
Oh, yes,
the
crucifix.
burning,
the burning
crucifix
crucifix.
burnt.
Yeah. I mean, Phil Leakey must have been like, he's either going, yes, this is my chance to shine because it's another hand and arm that I can do really well, or he's going, for God's sake, again. This is all I do.
He gets to do a foot as well. What more does he want?
He does get to do a foot.
And a whole head. Yeah.
Yeah. The dissolving scene is, okay, it's of its time, but it's still surprisingly effective.
Oh yeah, demonstrate.
It's quite. It's funny because it's like it starts off horrific, then it gets really funny, then it gets horrific again.
Yeah. There's actually a couple of good comedy beats in this as well. There's the beat with the crossing guard.
Oh, yes.
And then you've got Miles Malleson, who's telling you jokes about people getting killed in his coffin making room.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm with Ben on that one, though. He was really annoying.
I like him.
No, he was very, very irritating.
Yeah. Who was more irritating, him or the bloke with the fireworks in Women Without Men?
Oh, that's a tough call.
Ooh.
You get more. You get more of the firework man, but I'm tempted to say the Undertaker's more annoying.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
I liked it because it's a good nod to proper British horror. Because Miles Malleson is, of course, the room for one more guy in Dead of Night.
Yep. No, fair
so
enough.
he always gets an extra thumbs up for me. It's a nice little nod.
Yeah.
Also, there's one bit that I do love on this film where once you've got Dracula kind of blowing away in the wind because he's turned to dust, the score, it changes from this horror film to this romantic classical piece. It kind of shifts a gear instantly and it becomes this gorgeous piece of music. And you think, wow, that wasn't expected, because it's been pretty much all the way through, hasn't it? And then suddenly it's, wow, lush.
It becomes quite like sort of sentimental almost.
Yeah.
At the end,
yeah.
doesn't it? Would have been ruined if like Van Helsing had come in with a Henry Hoover to hoover him up.
one of those rechargeable little ones.
Yeah. A shark.
Yeah.
Going back to the sort of the subtleties of it, though, is that after Dracula, has been, sort of melted and blown away to dust, and I don't know what you kind of, or what I kind of expected Van Helsing to do, but he's standing contemplatively looking out of his window. And he's thanking God for the sun that has just obliterated Count Dracula. But I thought it was...
And the invention of the crucifix.
Well, Jesus didn't like them very much. But
that's why he's not coming back.
No. You think he wants to see another one of those? But it's just the way he's looking just out that window. It was just a really nice touch. I thought it was, it could have been so much more like sort of on the nose. And it wasn't. It was just genteel.
Well, you know why? Because he's looking at the ground, and obviously Dracula is turned to dust, and then he's looking out the window thinking, how is he coming back for 6 sequels?
Magic.
Movie magic. Yeah.
That's it. Well, yeah, we've got... How many other bloody Frankensteins have we got to go through? And all?
Oh, a million. The only bit I'm not sure about as far as this section of the film's concerned is the geography, because... it kind of gets carried away with itself. No, honestly, stay with me. Because it all gets a bit rushed and you kind of jump in between scenes and you think, hang on a second. At one point you had them racing from one state to another across this line. And then suddenly they're just sort of jogging between locations. You think, what's going on here? I mean, I can get that the editing's trying to create a sense of urgency, when you're trying to make it faster, but it's kind of become like a dream where you're walking from one location to the next. It's very odd.
Kev, I'm going to share with you 3 words that Smokey knows well that explain everything in films like this. Passage of time.
It happens a lot.
Yeah.
I don't even know where we're meant to be. Eastern Europe somewhere. I mean, one of the carriages has a Swiss flag on it early on. And obviously, with the assumption is that Dracula is in Transylvania, but it's never really said.
It never says Transylvania.
No, exactly. So
yeah.
it's like when they make up countries, like in The Expendables, Asmanistan or something.
I mean, maybe that's another copyright thing that maybe they couldn't have him in Transylvania.
You cannot copyright Transylvania. It's
a
real place.
But I mean, because the copyright is so heavy from the Stoker estate and from Universal, maybe just to be easy, they just don't say it.
But my understanding was that because Universal were the distributor, the part of the agreement was that they'd been given the rights to use Dracula, so presumably they'd been given fairly liberal rights. But maybe I don't know, though. I'm not arguing with you.
I mean,
just don't know.
all I can imagine is because, as you said, the budget is so small that you might as well just take out anything where you have to pay extra money. Because why the hell not? You don't want to pay more.
Like Whitby.
Exactly, yeah. Don't mention Whitby, don't mention Transylvania, don't make him turn into a bat or fog or whatever the hell, just keep it all basic, simple. Oh, he's just Count Dracula. Oh, he's in a nameless place. Cheap.
They blew the budget on the fake wine.
Yeah.
And the Gordon's gin.
That was pricey fake wine, my friend, I'll have you know.
So,
I have to go out, and I will not be back until after sundown tomorrow. But until then, please look upon this house as your own.
On to a summing up and scores, I reckon. I don't think I've got any other questions that I can say to you, to be honest.
Or want to.
Yeah, that's more like it.
Yeah, don't
I'm
want
done with you guys.
Yeah, I'm done
now. I want to go home to Klausenberg. So, Ben, do you want to start us off?
I can do. I enjoy this, and as I said earlier on in the discussion, Christopher Lee's performance is iconic, legendary, all of the superlatives you want to use. I love his every appearance in this. He's utterly terrifying as Count Dracula, and is the seminal, iconic version of the Count for me. But as a film, I find it a little bit wanting, I have to say. I don't know what it is about it. It's almost as if just all the elements in it don't quite add up to the full picture for me. It goes back to what I was saying before about I just think it's a little bit more time to add a little bit more understanding as to why we're meant to be threatened by the title character and what his motivations are. For all I find him as threatening as a character in his appearance, I don't find the whole concept of Dracula threatening in this film because I don't really know why I should. The film is lovely and tight, and on 80 minutes, I think it's a perfect length, but I just think if you compare it perhaps a little bit unfavorably to The Curse of Frankenstein, it, for me, uses those 80 minutes in the most efficient way, and it creates a beautiful little self-contained film. This, I don't think, can be said is self-contained. You do have to bring something into it. So for that reason, I do like it very much, and I think it's a beautiful film to look at. I think it's so well directed and lit. I'm not a huge fan of the score. I know that loads of people love the score, and it's iconic. I find it a little bit intrusive. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, cool. Smokey?
Yeah, this film is it's a curious for me personally. This is the Lee and Cushing debut for me. I know we've had The Curse of Frankenstein, and I enjoyed that, but for me, this is the proper, first proper pairing for them. Just probably for the basic reason that Christopher Lee has dialogue, and what he does with those few lines of dialogue is wonderful.
Mm.
I know what Ben's saying about the score. It is intrusive in places, but because it's so ridiculous and bombastic in spots, that it just works for the subject material. An interesting point that I noticed more so on a repeated watch was the scene where Cushing appears with the crucifix on to put on Lucy's head. There's no score whatsoever. It's silent, apart from her whimpers and screams, and that was excellent. The casting's great. Michael Gough's really good as well. As I say, seeing him soften mentally, but sort of harden, in the face of evil towards the end is really cool. Yeah, it looks great and it sounds great. But this was the thing I was having. This was what I mentioned earlier about looking at people's 1-star reviews online, which are ridiculous, by the way. And also this weird allegory that people have come up with about it being about homosexuality is just utter nonsense. I don't get that at all. I think it's silly. But I think it's a film that's really hard to dislike. Even if you're not a horror fan, I think it's a film that is just really good at what it does. It's not perfect. There are some downsides to it, but it's a really highly enjoyable film. So yeah, I'm going to give it an 8.
Well, right from the off, I'm not tying myself in not saying, well, in the book, because a faithful film adaptation is such a rare beast, and I feel like this works on its own merits. It works incredibly well in a very smart way, bringing Van Helsing into the story at just the right point. Like I said, completely ignoring Whitby, gets rid of all that. It's really lean right in this. But while we're talking about Van Helsing and while I'm thinking about him, I know this is going to sound like heresy, but knowing how well some of the later Dracula films that we've yet to see, but I've already seen, knowing how they turn out, I just wish that we'd have had a Van Helsing Vampire Hunter series instead, because I feel like Cushing could have really rocked it. For me, Cushing's the MVP. Obviously, Christopher Lee's brilliant. I've seen hundreds of different Draculas, and he's the one I always think of. And he's really brought all that character together for me. The fact that he's actually looked at it and thought, right, if this is a character that's existed for about 500 to 600 years, then you know he's going to have managed to avoid any confrontation for so long that he's become a masterclass of a chess player. He's always 2 steps ahead of everybody else. All the competition are always on the lookout for him. So for me, it's fantastic. The only thing that lets it down for me is the dreamlike geography. That just... that last 20 minutes is just a bit of a mess. It's just a bit of a tangle, and I feel like they could have really explained themselves a bit better. But
Dracula didn't have a business plan.
No Google Maps in those days, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Google Maps for a country that doesn't exist. So I'm going to go to a slightly higher rating than you, and mine's a 9 out of 10, because it's just one of those films I can watch over and over again and never tire of, but I can see there's some mechanics that are missing on it.
So, good stuff, even with the odd reservation. And now I promised you something a little special, so here's Kev talking to someone. Who? Well, have a listen. You won't regret it.
As this is something of a momentous occasion, we're doing something we've never done before. So I'm overjoyed to have a chat with Jonathan Southcott, who, apart from being a powerhouse of modern British film production, is also writer of many books, including the cult films of Christopher Lee, which was made a few years ago. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello. I think it was made 20 years ago. I mean, I was 20 when I did it. Well, he was still alive. That dates it to a degree already.
True.
Yeah, it was certainly the first thing that I wrote, and it was a real passion project, and it just seemed like a good idea. And I think there had been a book about Cushing recently at that time in the late 90s, but there hadn't been one about Lee for some time. There was a rather dusty old hardback called The Films of Christopher Lee, which was literally a write-up of all the movies, and then some comments from him at the end from the 80s. But he was, it's a weird thing about Christopher Lee. He had such an up and down career. He really was hot and cold so quickly. And that late period renaissance he had with Jackson and Lucas and people like that, I think was definitely the happiest period of his working life.
It's crazy to think that at one point he was actually working with Spielberg as well in 1941, and then it seemed to just drop off the map completely for about, I don't know, a good 5 or 6 years at least. Strange.
Well, the thing that always hampered his career is that he never earned the big bucks. So he never, I totally get, it's really easy. When I was a kid or a young man, I always thought, oh God, he moans about Dracula all the time. He moans about not having a big enough part. He moans about not being paid enough. It's all true, though. It's all completely true, because he was the movies. Even though he was in them for 5 minutes, he was totally a draw. And he certainly wasn't, I think he was getting paid between £5,000 and £10,000 per Dracula movie. At the same time, Sean Connery was getting paid $1 million for Bond. So there is no way that he was getting paid commensurately with his peers. So because of that, I think he was always very motivated by money. Also, as a young man, I believe his stepfather had been declared bankrupt. So he always had a real obsession with money. He was a very tight man. And, this is a matter of public record. You see him wearing the jackets towards the end of his life that he was wearing in films in the 1960s with suede patches on the elbows. And so he was always thinking that if he didn't take a job, there might not be another one. And that, of course, is why he did A, so many films, and B, so many bad films. I think that the Hollywood period turned out the way that he wanted it to, in terms of allowing him to stretch flex his acting muscles, for sure. Because, he did a Chuck Norris movie not long after that Spielberg movie, which was a big deal at the time. And, he got to do things like singing in The Return of Captain Invincible, which is an indescribably bad film. But he loved it passionately. He really, really loved doing that. And, Richard O'Brien wrote the song for it. But I think he always seemed to fall victim to, he wasn't in the Rocky Horror Show, which Richard O'Brien had written before. That would have been great. He was in the next one that no one saw. And I think that happened a lot to him. And then, he turned down Halloween, but he did Howling too. There was a lot of that in his life where he'd make the decisions not based on quality, but based on, I need to work now kind of thing. I don't think that ever really left him. And I would imagine that the only time he really got paid proper money was when he did Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and those kind of movies, because they're such huge budgets. Everyone does. So I think that drove a lot of his decisions, and is interesting that it informs the character of the man, because he was a very interesting and complex man.
Now, as part of your book, you got a chance to get to know Sir Christopher Lee a bit better than most of us ever will. How was he with you? Because I know that it can be thorny sometimes.
No, he was lovely. So I met him with David Gregory. We were doing the making of The Wicker Man for the wooden box set of that. And he was doing an interview. Lee was doing an interview that night at the National Film Theatre, I think with Robin Hardy and someone else. And he was lovely. He was one of the most famous people in the whole world to me. You know, he was an absolute icon, and he was very polite, surprisingly humble. I discovered the better I got to know him that wasn't always the case. But we basically, you know, we talked about The Wicker Man on camera, and then David said to me, just go and talk to him for a bit, you know, keep him entertained. So I sat with him in the corner for, I guess, you know, what should have been 5 minutes, but him being him, it suddenly became an hour because he really did bunny. And we talked about everything. I was asking him about all these movies, really obscure movies. And the one thing that stays with me from that initial conversation is that I asked him about Howling 2. And he said, of course, the ridiculous thing about Howling 2 is that the wolves walked on 2 legs. And I thought, what do you think is the most ridiculous thing about Howling 2? Buddy, we got problems. He was really interesting. And also the other thing I discovered at that point is that because he did so many of these films, and often he would only do 1 or 2 days on them, his memory wasn't always crystal clear. And I talked to him at great length about him not talking in Dracula, Prince of Darkness, because he was insistent that the lines they gave him were unspeakable and blah, blah, blah. I said to him, it's not true, because I've got a copy of the script here, and it says Dracula is a ghost, he has no lines. You're wrong. I said, well, you know, I haven't written the script myself. Is it, you know? And eventually we worked out that all the dialogue that he attributed to that was actually from Dracula AD 1972.
Oh, yeah, which has got some unspeakable dialogue.
So all that stuff where Dracula says, I am the apocalypse and I'm this and that, it was all from that, because it was very much Don Horton dialogue and not Jimmy Sangster dialogue. So it was really interesting. And he, you know, there were films that I was very enthusiastic about that he wasn't interested in at all. Yeah, my favourite, and we'll come to this later, I love Horror Express. I think it's great. He thought that was a B-movie load of rubbish. He wasn't impressed with that at all. And, you know, obviously he'd quite recently at that point done Jinnah, which was you know, load of rubbish, I thought. But he thought it was like Gandhi and was going to change his life. But actually, obviously, what changed his life was the Star Wars and the Lord of the Rings and so on. But he was great, you know, and the endless stories, and he was really interesting. And while we were doing these things, you know, we used to, the talent who were in those documentaries and the audio commentaries and that kind of stuff, they used to get paid a little fee. You know, normally it would be like £100 or whatever. For him, it was more. And he always used to insist on getting paid in cash, which I thought was really unusual, you know, because in those days it wasn't the case. But while we were chatting, this kind of shady guy appeared in the room wearing a dirty Mac and a beret, and was asking for Mr. Lee. And, you know, everyone was sort of looking at him and thinking, who the hell are you? And this guy came and very, very theatrically pulled out of a bag, you know, an envelope and gave it to Christopher, and Christopher gave him the money. And I'm thinking, you know, what the hell's going on here? Am I in the middle of some Hollywood drug deal? But he collected military insignia, like cap badges and stuff like that. So he used to use all his readies to buy them from this guy. And when it all made perfect sense in the end, because he was all into that kind of stuff. But what a strange, surreal atmosphere it was. And anyway, it got stranger. He gave me his number. You know, had to phone Christopher Lee at 19 years old. It was quite intimidating. Hello. So I arranged to meet him at his agent's London office, and it was quite a cold day, and I remember that for a reason I'll come back to. Anyway, I walked into the building, pressed the lift went ping, and out walks an actor called Paul Barber, who you might remember from The Full Monty and Only Fools and Horses. Yeah. Who has just been in a film with me called Renegades. And The Full Monty had just come out like a year ago. So ping, doors open. My God, it's another famous actor. What's going on here? That was pretty amazing. He went, all right, mate. I said, yeah, hi. So I go up in the lift, sweating, and, you know, the doors open, and the secretary showed me into the sort of boardroom, and there he is, sat at the end, Dracula. Oh, that's a very nice London overcoat you're wearing. I said, oh, thank you. How nice. And he was really nice, and we were there for a couple of hours, and I was asking him questions, and, you know, he was lovely. He was really accommodating. And then there was one more meeting. I went round to his flat in Cadogan Square, which was not what I expected. I thought movie stars lived in massive mansions. It was Cadogan Square is in Knightsbridge, just round the back of Harrods. It's a very exclusive address, but it was quite a small apartment. and he was very casually. He had a baseball cap on, and denims, and he was really nice, and we chatted. But I saw a different side to him then, because while we were there, it was announced on the news, on the radio, that Michael Caine had got either his knighthood or his CBE. I can't remember. And Christopher said, without missing a beat, they shouldn't give awards to the working class like that. I thought, wow. Now, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say he might have been joking, but I'll interpretation. But it had a very sort of sharp, caustic sense of humour.
Yeah, it was very dry as well. Very dry.
And I think he really was a Marmite actor. All the actors I've met and spoken to over the years who worked with him, all literally either loved him or hated him. No one ever said, yeah, he's fine. It was either, yeah, he's great, or God, what a nightmare. He was a real man out of time, because he was. I mean, he was a man out of time, best of times. He was that wonderful aristocratic heritage and very fixed ideas on life and politics and things like that. And he was a very, very well-read man. Very, very well read and articulate, and could talk about anything, and did. Edward Woodward said to me, he's like a tape recorder without a stop button. You press play, and then the anecdote just goes on and on and on, and then you go and shoot a scene, and then you come back, and he's off again.
In any language.
In any language, yeah. But he was great, and I think he was terribly underrated as an actor. I mean, he wasn't as good an actor as Cushing, that's for sure, but he was terribly underrated as an actor. And I think, one of the things I always say to sort of genre actors now is there's always a danger when you do too much that your value becomes spread. And there was a time when he did everything. And I think towards the end of his life, he got pickier, or maybe he couldn't do as much, I don't know. But, even in the last Star Wars film, or not the last one, because he's only in it for a second, but the Star Wars film that he was in, he still gave a great performance and had all that majesty on screen. And, there certainly isn't another one, that's for sure. There's never been a successor to Christopher Lee, and I don't think there ever will be.
Sad state of affairs, really. Dracula's only his second appearance as well for Hammer, isn't it? So for anyone that's doing the same as Smokey and actually watching all the Hammer in order, apart from this one, Dracula, what other high points that he's got on the way?
I think one of the best performances he gave was in The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. I think he's fantastic in that. And I think he was quite grumpy that he wasn't Jekyll and Hyde. But he was totally wrong for that. But I think he really gets to play a good role in that and flex his acting muscles. I think you see him sort of playing himself a bit in The Hound of the Baskervilles. He's very stiff and awkward and sort of up his own arse and pompous in that. But in Jekyll, he relaxes and has fun. And I suspect, although obviously I never worked with him in an acting capacity, I suspect he was an actor that really needed to be directed. I think when he was directed well, he was great. And if he wasn't, then maybe he was a bit stiffer and, did his own thing. But I thought he was sublime in Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. It's an underrated film, and it's one of his three best performances for Hammer. The other two, I would say, The Devil Rides Out. And I personally much prefer the book to the film, I must say. And the character of the Duc de Richelieu is written completely differently in the book, which is one of my favourite books. But whenever I read it, or reread it now, I still see Christopher Lee in the role. And that's testament to how great he was and how much he owned that film. And I think, if anything, that film didn't do his performance justice, because even when I saw it as a kid, I just thought it was hokey and not particularly scary. It's great. It's really good fun. It's cool, but it's very much in that early Hammer sort of period. So it's great in that. And ironically, I think the other one where he's brilliant is To the Devil a Daughter. I think his performance in that is his best sinister performance ever. And that scene where Denham Elliott is talking to him on the phone and he makes the phone turn into a snake is phenomenal. I think it's really, really good. And that shows you a whole different facet to his performances. And other stuff he could have done for sure. So they're the three that really stand out to me. Obviously, Rasputin is great fun. It's mine, but it's great fun. And that bravura performance he gives, you can just tell that he's having... I always love watching actors that I like having a good time on screen. And you can tell that that's the one film where they really let him go and have a great time and enjoy it. I don't think it's as good a performance or as good a film as the other three, but that's that one I would say for sure. And he always thought that the best film he did for Hammer was A Taste of Fear.
Really? I love that film as well.
Yeah, it's a good film. All of those little thrillers are really good, but he thought that was the best all-round movie he did for them. And I think Dracula, Prince of Darkness is great. I think that's almost as good as the first one. For me, the first Dracula, Brides of Dracula, Kiss of the Vampire, and Dracula, Prince of Darkness, those are the 4 best Hammer vampire movies by a mile. I think Dracula Has Risen from the Grave is really pretty, but it's largely plotless.
Yeah.
I think Taste of Blood of Dracula is a great movie, but it's not really a Dracula movie. And something else. This is one of the other things I nailed with him. I said to him, "Why is Scars of Dracula so bad?" Because it's a diabolical film. And he said they rushed it to get it together really quickly for their EMI deal, and then it suddenly made sense to me. Okay. And people always say, why does it start with the castle being burned and the bat bringing him back to life and all this kind of stuff? Yeah. Scars of Dracula was an early draft of Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, because it is literally the same movie.
Yeah.
So they found an early draft, and even the characters have the same name, Paul and all this kind of stuff. And so someone got an old draft of that, changed it a bit, and there it is, Scars of Dracula. Great, off we go. And so, that's the thing is, in those days, producers didn't think about continuity. They weren't thinking about franchise. They didn't even know they were going to be on TV, let alone on video or DVD. So there was no concept of anything like that. So they really thought they could pull a fast one and literally remake a film they made 3 years earlier.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the time that these films were coming out, they'd be lucky if they'd actually get a repeat performance in the cinema. Once it had done its original run, it was very rare for a film to actually be reappraised about 10 years later or whatever, or come back on a different double bill.
Exactly. And in 1970, they were thinking about these things being on 8mm digest with no sound.
Yeah.
So, no one was going to notice that literally that was the same film as the last one.
Crazy. Here's a tough one then. Can you remember what your first Hammer film was?
I can remember it as clear as day. It was Dracula.
All right. Oh, perfect. Then you turned up for this then.
Yeah, no, it really was. It was Dracula. It was on BBC One, I guess, in either 1987 or 1988. And I'll come back to how I can date that soon. And I loved like monsters and vampires and dinosaurs like all kids do. And I just kept nagging my mum, I want to watch one of these movies. I want to watch one of these movies. And that one just happened to be the one that came round on TV next. So my parents recorded it for me. I'm pretty sure it was on a Friday night on BBC One, and they watched it with me on the Saturday morning. And I was just absolutely blown away. This was a world that I'd never seen before. And I immediately responded to Peter Cushing, who I thought was a fantastic actor. And the next weekend, exactly one weekend later, ITV showed The Evil of Frankenstein and Dracula, Prince of Darkness. So those were the first 3. After that, remember the order. But that was my bombardment. I had, though, however, those are the horror movies. I had seen 1 Million Years BC sometime before that because we had it on Betamax cassette.
Oh,
so
wow.
I've seen that as a 4-year-old. But in my mind, that wasn't a Hammer movie, although I love it and think it's great. It's a different thing, really. So those were the ones originally that I saw, and Dracula left an indelible impression on me. And I still think it's the best one.
It's a belter. It's quite something when you can actually pin down what your first one was. For me, it was Creaking Mass in the Pit.
That was one of the early ones I saw as well, and that's what still, my 3 Hammer actors are Cushing, Lee, and Andrew Keir, because he was so underrated and magnificent.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's one of those things where you'll always remember it's like your first girlfriend.
What, horror?
Oh, yeah, terrible horror. As well as his extensive work with Hammer and practically every other studio, in fact, thinking about it, you're on about Jekyll and Hyde. Christopher did get to play Jekyll and Hyde in I, Monster, and he did a great version of it on there. But apart from that, he's chalked up quite a fair chunk of Euro horror as well. Are there any ones you'd recommend or one against?
Yeah, well, my favourite is Horror Express. I love Horror Express.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that to me is like a perfect movie because the concept is brilliant. The Cushing and Lee are both on top form. Telly Savalas turns up halfway through.
Dynamite.
The music, the soundtrack is fantastic. I adore that film. And I really like, there were 3 movies they made, him and Cushing, back to back at that time. That, Nothing But the Night, and The Creeping Flesh. And I find that, I mean, Horror Express is the only Euro one, but Nothing But the Night, I think, is really underrated and a really, really, really cool movie. And, of course, he produced it as well. That was...
it was his company, wasn't it?
Yeah, with Charlemagne, which he set up with Tony Nelson Keyes, who was the Hammer line producer. Yeah. And they were either going to do that or To the Devil a Daughter first. And unfortunately for them, they chose that. Because, history has not necessarily been kind to the Devil a Daughter because it was actually a huge success. It made loads of money. It was in the top 5 in the UK cinema chains for years. Did really, really good. But it just, because it's not a Hammer film as we think of it, it's become sort of unloved. So Horror Express, definitely. I also have a bit of a soft spot for the Jess Franco Dracula. I've always found that, I saw that, I think I was about 13 years old. And do you remember on Sky TV, you used to get German channels and French channels and things like that? I actually saw it in German first. To be honest with you, it was slightly better in German. But
it made more sense.
The visuals were so cool. Apart from the only bit that really let it down was when all the taxidermy animals attack them, and it's really obvious some Spanish crew member lunging with a stuffed animal like that at the camera, which is
throw a cat at him.
Very, very strange. But I think those two are definitely worth a look. I think the two best things he did in the 70s were the Musketeers films, which I thought he was brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
And again, you could really see him enjoying it in those.
Yeah, he's got an eye patch, and he's bound to be evil.
Totally. And I think he always sparks off Oliver Reed very well. And I thought he was great in The Man with the Golden Gun. I think it's an underrated movie as it is, but I think he again, you can really see him enjoying it. Anytime Christopher Lee smiles on screen, which is very rare, you can get having a good time. And he loved that. And he did say to me it was the first time he felt he was on a proper movie, because they had a unit of 200 and catering, and he obviously got paid well, and first class flights and all that kind of stuff. So I think he really had a good time on that, and that's certainly what pushed him to go to America. That and Richard Widmark on To the Devil a Daughter, who apparently really got into his ear and said, "You don't want to keep making these Mickey Mouse films in Britain. You've got to come out to the States." And I totally get why he did that. I mean, there comes a time when anyone has a certain amount of success in the British film industry and has to think seriously about going to America. And I think the sad thing for him is, had he done it 10 years earlier, it could well have paid dividends for him.
Oh, definitely, because, I mean, let's face it, it wasn't exactly a spring chicken anymore by the time he got to Hollywood.
He wasn't, and he looked, his look changed. They say people's look changes every 10 years. And his look changed in the mid-70s, and he suddenly looked not quite as robust as he did. If you look at him in Horror Express and then you look at him in Airport 77, he changes quite a bit. And not because he had a facelift or anything like a lot of actors do, but he did change his casting bracket, I think, for sure. The other thing I tell you that I remember being so thrilled when I was 12, I think, that cameo he did in Gremlins 2, that was great.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about that.
I rented that not knowing he was in it. So when he popped up playing a mad scientist, that was fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. So are you feeling optimistic about the reignition of Hammer and Amicus this year? Or are you worried that the brands might be damaged at all?
Well, the thing is, I don't think they're brands. We're talking about two companies that never thought about branding. Hammer was called Hammer because of Will Hammer, who was Anthony Hines' father.
Yeah.
And they spun Hammer Horror much, much later. I mean, maybe late 60s, early 70s. But it stuck, and people use it as a slang almost. I know personally only too well how hard it is to make any movie. So I wish anyone that can do it the best of luck, because it's really, really hard. I had a chat with Laurie, the guy who's doing the Amicus movie, who seems terribly nice and really is enthusiastic about the movies. And I had a look at a trailer or a preview for a sword and sorcery movie he's done, which looks great. And I'm just so happy that someone loves those old anthology movies enough to try and make one. I mean, over the years, I've tried to make anthology horrors loads of times, never got anywhere close because the market isn't particularly receptive to them. But because he's going the crowdfunding way, he has a different set of problems. So yeah, I think it's great. And I knew Max Rosenberg really quite well in the last 10 years of his life. And he was a real interesting character, very bombastic. Loved a bit of litigation because he was a lawyer before he was a film producer. And he used to shout at me down the phone about this and that and the other. And he hated Subotsky. I mean, don't ever, how they thought about calling their the Latin name for friendship, I don't know.
Irony.
I think it was very much mutual. But Max was a real New York Jewish intellectual. He read every book and he talked about political science a lot, and he was really interesting. But they were obviously a massive culture clash. But I suspect no one else would have put up with either of them. So I think they were sort of forced together by lack of being, mutually awkward. And I'm a big fan of Amicus. I remember the first Amicus film that I saw as well, which was From Beyond the Grave, which is still my favourite one. I think that's an absolutely immaculate film. The rest of them, I can kind of take or leave. I like Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. I think The Beast Must Die is really good fun. But they really were for me always very much the poor man's Hammer. There are there are 20 Hammer movies I could watch tonight and absolutely be thrilled by, maybe 30. Whereas with Amicus, it's more like half a dozen. And only 3 of them would be really, really good. And I think, when I was a kid, I liked the Doctor Who movies, but I think they're awful now. And I met Cushing. I don't know if I've ever told you this. I met him when I was 8 years old. So this is what absolutely cemented it for me. So I'd seen those early movies, and my mum was always very supportive of that because she liked them when she was a kid as well, I guess. And she read in the local paper that Peter Cushing had a book coming out, and he was signing copies of it. So one Saturday morning, she dutifully took me down to Waterstones in Tunbridge Wells, where I met Peter Cushing, and he signed that for me. And it was a very busy bookshop, still there today, and there must have been, 200 people. And they, as you can imagine, a lot of them were dressed in sort of like long leather coats and all that kind of stuff. And I was a bit scared. And he kissed my mum's hand, that absolute Cushing cliche, put me on his knee, put his arm around me. Local paper took a picture. I wish I had that picture. That'd be great, wouldn't it? And I just thought, wow. And that was my first brush with celebrity. So I've always judged everyone else by him. And he was amazing. And he had, it's very hard to explain this, but it's very pertinent to my business. You can be the best actor in the world, but if you have no star quality, it's very hard to punch through. And when I say star quality, I mean, when people walk into a restaurant, everyone goes, oh, it's that person. Doesn't matter if they're famous or not. It's what it is. Cushing had it when I was a kid. Christopher Lee had it in bundles. He wasn't the best actor in the world, but God, he had charisma. He really, really did. And when I was a kid, I remember as well, a teenager maybe, meeting John Pertwee, and he had it. He was like a light bulb. He lit up the room. And that's a real important thing, and I'm always looking for that in sort of new actors, whether they've got something like that. I'm not comparing them to those guys because they were all titans, but it's a very hard to define thing. But when someone's got it, you can really feel it. I mean, Cushing was a very old man by then. He was very, very old and walked with a stick, and was so gaunt and didn't really look like Peter Cushing from the Hammer films, but obviously I knew who it was. But Christopher Lee was very, very tall. I mean, maybe 6'5". So, I mean, I'm 6'1". He was much taller than me, and he really could sort of command any street that he walked down and was head and shoulder. Actors in Hollywood particularly are often famously shorter, and I'm sure that probably hampered him out there as well. I bet there's a lot of Hollywood actors that took one look at him and said, "Yeah, I'm not going anywhere near that."
Yeah, let's face it, you've got to try and get the same camera shot with both of them in it. Just the logistics of it.
Totally. And the thing with Christopher as well is because he was so tall, he had long arms. He wasn't like one of those that sort of blend in. He had these, you see it when he played Frankenstein, he has those long arms at his side and long legs, and he had a real unique gait and look as well.
Brilliant. Before we wind things up, in a desert islands discs kind of situation, what would be the 5 Hammer films that you simply couldn't do without?
Well, Dracula, definitely.
Yeah.
It's such a, in a lot of ways, it's still the best adaptation of the book because Jimmy Sangster was a really, really good writer, and he never gets the credit that he deserves because he stripped out everything extraneous from that very, very, very long book. And as a producer, I know he did it all for budget. So there's no Sea Journey because it's really expensive.
Yep.
There's no Arthur Homewood because it's an American actor you have to ship in from the States. Sorry, Quincy Morris, who was the American in the book. You get rid of the 3 Brides of Dracula, and you make it 1. Everything he did was for expediency, but it also, God, it rattles along. That film, it doesn't waste a second of screen time. And the dynamic energy that Cushing had was really quite unique. And it is the thing about Dracula as well. The first one is it is Cushing's film. Lee's barely in it, and he's literally in it at the beginning, and he's in it a couple of times at the end. But as soon as they come in on Cushing in the inn, that guy owns the screen, and what an amazing, dexterous performance that is. And he also, in those days, the heroes of horror movies were kind of pretty boring, staid guys. So you compare Edward Van Sloan with him. He jumps on that table and he pegs it down and he pulls the curtains up. Like, wow, this is like James Bond. This is brilliant.
Yeah, there's no stuntman there. That's him.
This is Errol Flynn stuff. And he made those films cool for young boys, I think. He was a real hero figure. And when the next one I saw with him was Evil of Frankenstein, where, he's anything but evil. It should be really called The Heroism of Frankenstein, that one. He was great. So I would say Dracula, probably Kiss of the Vampire, because I think it's really underrated. I think it should get a lot more love than it does. I think it's the most intelligent of the Hammer vampire films. I think Noel Willman is very, very sinister. I think Clifford Evans is a great protagonist. Also great in Curse of the Werewolf.
It looks good as well, that. It just looks
Beautiful.
so
Beautiful,
gorgeous, every shot in that film.
Yeah, it does. And also it shows that although the Hammer formula was quite reliant on Cushing and Lee, it could work just as well without them.
Yep.
I don't think it would have been a better film if Lee had played Ravner and Cushing had played whatever the professor was called. In the same way that I always believe that Blood from the Mummy's Tomb is better with Andrew Keir than it would have been with Peter Cushing. I always love watching him. I think he's a magnetic actor, but I think because Cushing had all those problems at home with his wife being ill, I don't think he would have been really focused and engaged with the material. So he would have sort of, phoned that one in.
Yeah.
That's another favourite. It's not quite in the top 5, but that's another favourite. 1 Million Years BC is a film I think still has massive, massive spectacle. Probably the best Hammer soundtrack. And until I was about 15, in fact, probably until I met Ray Harryhausen, to be honest with you, because I interviewed him for the DVD of 1 Million Years BC, I actually genuinely thought they got a giant turtle and put it on a green screen and had it lumber across that beach. I never knew that he made that. That's kind of testament to the quality of those special effects. Because they made they had the iguana with the spines on its back, so I assumed the turtle was the same. so that's probably up there. Quatermass in the Pit is number 4. I think it's the most intelligent Hammer film. I think Andrew Keir again completely holds the screen. Love Julian Glover. I've done 3 movies with Julian now. He's a good mate. He's great. Can't believe he was only 30 when he played Colonel Breen. But you see that's an interesting movie. If Christopher Lee had played Colonel Breen, that would have been a great part for him, that like snotty army officer. But I bet he wouldn't have wanted to do it because it was a smaller role and he would have seen himself as Quatermass. That's the sort of, the different dynamic of being an actor and whatever.
Good point.
But I think that's a great film. Barbara Shelley, what a great actress she was, so underrated, great in The Gorgon as well. Yeah, that's another film that will be sort of creeping into my top 10.
Well, we've just watched her in Camp on Blood Island, and I didn't even recognise her in that at all. And she's amazing in that.
Yeah, she was, I think, with all due respect to all of the others, she was definitely the proper actress at Hammer.
Yes, definitely.
For sure, because she really could bring all of that. And she was great in Dracula, Prince of Darkness. I mean, she was never gave a bad performance, for sure. It's really hard to do 5. Captain Clegg is almost in there. I love that. That's a great swashbuckler.
Yeah.
Such an opulent film. Love Oliver Reed as well. He's always great. So that's almost there. Also, I watched Cash on Demand again with my wife last year. And that, what a great little stage play that is. 2 fantastic screen actors absolutely just throwing everything at it. That was a really cool movie. But I think my final one is probably Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. I think it's by far the best Frankenstein movie. I think it's Cushing's best ever performance because there's not a shred of Peter Cushing in that. It's all acting. I think Veronica Carlson, to be fair to her, she was also a proper actress in that. She wasn't a dolly bird in that. She really gave it her all. Simon Ward, Freddie Jones, they were all magnificent in that. And I think the script was just so much more grown up than all the others. It was a proper movie. And I don't know, it almost felt like it was directed by someone else apart from Terence Fisher because it felt more adult than his movies. He always used to talk about gothic fairy tales, and there's no fairy tale there. That's like it's been forged in Vietnam, that film. It's so bleak and dark. So I think that's the last great one. That's the thing with Hammer is that there's so much to enjoy with it. That amazing legacy they produce through volume. So 5 is really hard. I mean, I could quite happily be on that desert island for some time watching those movies.
On repeat.
Yeah, but as long as it wasn't Blood Island.
Yeah, that's not a retreat you want to go to.
No.
Well, thank you very much for this, Jonathan. I know you're a very, very, very busy man, and I'm really glad that we've been able to hook up and have a chat.
Me too. No, it's always a joy to talk about Hammer, and it's lovely to see you.
Patrons of our Hidden Room tier will be able to hear a considerably longer version of that fascinating interview with Jonathan Sothcott. If you're not a patron, you can sign up at patreon.com/househammerpod. And just to add, there's absolutely loads of extra content in the Hidden Room already, which we're adding to all of the time, and it just costs $5 a month. And also remember to check out linktree.com/househammerpod for all the ways to stay in touch with us. I think that's just about it for this episode, So until next time, it's goodbye from me, Ben Taylorson.
From me, Smokey.
And from me, Kev Moore.
And be sure to join us soon when we're donning the snorkel for a murderous thriller. Not literally, because that wouldn't help the audio, trying to record with a snorkel on. And I don't have a snorkel. I have some goggles. and a pair of swimming trunks with a picture of the Incredible Hulk on them. But anyway, next time we're talking about the snorkel. So let me get in nice and early and say, oh, this isn't Frankenstein or Dracula. But I'm sure we'll have a great time talking about it anyway. Take care.
No idea what an evil man he is. What terrible things he does.